Hey guys, Joe here. This is the Joe Madden Sports Show. I'm joined today by Frank Seravalli, the president of hockey content at the Daily Faceoff. Frank, how's the day treating you so far?
Pretty good, Joe. I'm in Toronto for the Hockey Hall of Fame induction ceremony, which it's Monday, November 14th. That goes tonight, and some GM meetings here also in Toronto, and then heading home on Wednesday.
Wow, you've got a busy slate ahead of you. Are you still going back to Philly? Is Philly home?
Yeah, born and raised. I've never actually ventured very far. I've lived there my entire life and career, and even while I was working for TSN, would always either work from home or get on a plane. So it's where I'm from. It's where my family is, and it's where I probably will be in for a long time.
Okay, how did a kid from Philly become such a hockey lover?
Well, I grew up playing, so that was really the first hook. My dad was always into hockey, and me and my brother played. In fact, my sister played as well, and so I was sort of immersed in it from a young age. And then I figured out, I don't know, when I was like 14 or 15, that I probably wouldn't be good enough to continue on and playing much longer, and always wanted to be a hockey reporter next, and so that was the thing I chased.
I love it. What position did you play?
I was a defenseman, and I guess you would call me an all-around defenseman, not too offensive-minded or defensive-minded.
Were you that chippy guy out on the field or out on the ice?
Not really. The physicality wasn't a huge part of my game. I was more of a puck mover.
Okay, I like it. Who would you compare yourself to in the league? Come
on. That's a good question. I'd probably be a third pair defenseman on some team. I don't know. Pick a name out of the hat. Dylan DeMello, for instance, from the Winnipeg Jets. Someone like that.
I like it. Now, you were with TSN for 6 years. You had a fantastic career there. Tell me about one memory that really sticks out in your mind of working with TSN.
I would say just the opportunity to be part of different panels. Really, the one that sticks out for me the most is probably the Stanley Cup final with the Ottawa that was the Eastern Conference final with the Ottawa Senators. I think it was 2017 against the Pittsburgh Penguins. They went to Game 7 of that East final, and I got an opportunity that playoff run to really begin to stand next to the big boys in terms of panels. Just being on a panel with James Duthie and Bob McKenzie was, sort of a goal that I had always chased, and kind of the opportunity to step into that spot, even if it was on a day where someone else, was traveling or couldn't make it or had another commitment. I didn't care. I was always excited to hop into that chair and to then, be in a spot on media day of Stanley Cup final or whatever it was. I always wanted to sit next to those guys and be in the big chair. And so the first time I was able to really break through and do that, it was pretty exciting.
What was that moment like, that first time that you sat there with them?
Probably nerve-wracking, mostly because you don't want to do anything that screws up the hit. So a lot of these are taped, they're not live, and you just make sure you're not that person that stumbles to have to start over. And if you do stumble, power through, because it was the middle of the summer, it's June, it was in Ottawa, it was hot, we're all sweating through our suits, and you want to just get out of there as quick as you can, and you definitely don't want to make Bob McKenzie mad.
Yeah, you don't want to be the one that looks at Bob and says, okay, Bob, we got to take that again, right?
Yeah, especially when, for me, it would be my part to speak, 2 minutes in or 4 minutes in. You don't want to have them go off again from the top.
Okay, I completely agree with you there. Tell us about that very first moment, though, that mic was in your hand. What was that feeling like?
I don't know. It was also probably pretty nerve-wracking. I can tell you my first ever hit for TSN, it was in Ottawa. I was with Brent Wallace, and, I had never done TV on any sort of, stage like that. I had done panel work when I lived in Philly for a local Philly sports talk show, but it was never anything like, being at the draft or being at the NHL awards in Vegas. And I was with Brent Wallace, and I was nervous, and him and the cameraman had sort of pointed out 4 or 5 different things that I was doing wrong before I even said a word. And kind of by that point, it rattled me, and I wasn't ready. And I was thinking, I went into it feeling so confident, like, hey, I'm ready for this. I've been waiting for this my whole life. And I stood up there and it was like, you're doing this wrong. You're holding the mic wrong. You're standing here. Don't stand like that. Smile. Don't look like an idiot. And so it was all those different kind of things that sort of came at me at once. And instead of, sort of shrugging them off, I probably took them a little bit too seriously. And I'll tell you that it impacted me probably for the first 6 months that I was doing stuff, because I was so self-conscious about all those little points that they were making. And had I just kind of stood up there and been myself, I would have been so much better off.
So if you could go back into that moment and give yourself advice at that time, what would your advice have been?
Don't listen to them. Just do what do what you know how to do. Be authentic, be yourself, and the rest will take care of itself.
Yeah, Frank, I have to agree with you that being authentic is something that really comes out in you. How did you get the ability to be so authentic on camera? Because you completely are.
Well, it's exactly that. Just try and be myself. I don't, I'm never gonna be Bob McKenzie, or I'm never gonna be Darren Dreger, or I'm never gonna be any of these other guys that have different standing, or different follower counts, or different ways that they go about their business. But I've found that I've been able to be really successful just being who I am and being good at what I do. And it may not be everyone's cup of tea. It may not be, what everyone wants to hear, or I may not do my job the exact same way that everyone else does, but I'm really comfortable with it, because at the end of the day, Joe, the only person that I need to reconcile with is myself. And so when I go to sleep at night, I always ask, like, did I work as hard as I can today? And did I do it the right way? And I find that, on more days than not, I'm answering yes to both those questions. And that allows me to sleep pretty comfortably at night.
You do a fantastic job in this industry. I love the content you're putting out. Can you tell everyone a little bit more about what you're doing at the Daily Face-Off?
Yeah, so I left TSN in 2021, and I kind of hit a wall. I said, enough. I wasn't getting really kind of the opportunity that I wanted, and I was sort of being held back from, other things that I wanted to do. And I quit. I handed in my resignation, and a lot of people had said to me, "Are you crazy? Like, this is TSN. It's Canada's sports network. Everyone watches TSN. You're giving up such an amazing platform." But the truth is, I was really unhappy. And I had been unhappy for a while based on a number of different promises that TSN had made to me to say, hey, we're going to continue to, advance your career here and there. And it never really came to fruition. And they never really took me seriously. And so I just had enough. I said, I'm going to move on, and I'm going to do it on my terms. And I had sort of made a list of all the different things that I was ready to give up in order to do that. It was like, hey, I have, a wife and 2 kids, and, if I need to sell my car, I'll do it. And if I need to do this and that, and I had sort of had this long range vision of like, hey, if it takes me 6 months again to land on my feet, I'm fine with that. Here's all the things that I can do in order to make that happen. And you never really know what's out there in the universe for you. And I think that's what was also so liberating and exciting. I was sitting there thinking, at the exact moment that I had decided to hand in my resignation, 2 different US media rights partners were in the process of bidding and securing the NHL TV rights deals in TNT and ESPN. And I was thinking, I'll latch on with one of them. That was really my ultimate plan. I was thinking, that's the place that I'll end up. And I was, excited and really interested. And earlier that year in January, this happened in May, I started a podcast with Daily Face-Off and their team, and it had gone really well, but I had never really given it a significant thought in terms of, hey, this is a place that I could hang my hat long term.
Yeah.
And so I turned in my resignation, I announced it on Twitter, and I'd say within 24 hours, Jay Downton and the team at the Nation Network and Daily Face-Off had contacted me, and they were like, hey, we're interested in doing something with you on a full-time scale. And I again, wasn't what I thought it might be, wasn't where I thought I might be. And turns out it was the exact perfect place for me to be at that time. And I've been really thrilled and lucky over the last, year and a half now since I've been there to really get in on the ground level and help build something from the bottom up top. And so the opportunity to hire people, devise a content strategy and plan, go through and help the Nation Network acquire different shows. We were acquired by a parent company and Playmaker. And, all these different things have happened, and I've never been happier. I've never been more fulfilled, and I've never been more challenged because there is a lot on my plate. I'm not just, someone that is out there trying to break news and being an insider and a writer and a podcaster. I'm also helping now on the business side accomplish these goals and tasks as a team. And so that's been really fulfilling too. So definitely not a place that I thought I'd end up. And that's sort of the best thing about life is you never really know. But sometimes you end up in the right place for the right reasons at the right time.
I absolutely love that you had faith in yourself and took that jump to make sure that you were happy. Your wife
I
must
was
be an
just going to
amazing
say,
supporter.
yeah, I was just going to say that she actually deserves, my wife's name is Megan, and she deserves a lot of credit for that because she was the person really kind of from the beginning saying, you're not happy here, go do something. And luckily, she's working and she has a great job and she's able to support us in case I didn't get a job, but things would have been tight. And she was fully supportive right from the beginning, saying like, I know you're not happy. You're making the rest of us in your family unhappy based on how unhappy you are, and go take a chance. You're not going to get too many opportunities like this. I was timing it, as I mentioned, planned on like trying to latch on with one of these other, big media legacy brands in the US, and that didn't materialize. And if it wasn't for her support and her saying, you can go do this, I probably wouldn't have.
Well, hats off to Megan. I'm so glad that she pushed you in the right direction and you're exactly where you want to be now. Let's quickly talk about a couple other things. I want to know if you could sit down with three players, go for dinner with them, who would those three players be?
Past or present?
Past or present?
Um, hmm.
Or is there one that sticks out in your mind?
Not really. Like there's always like a collection of players that I think back on in terms of, when I first started my career, I was covering the Flyers, and I
Yeah.
covered the Flyers for 7 years, and I had spent so much time around them that I really got to know them on a personal basis. And I think I'd probably like to go to dinner with a few of those guys and actually buy dinner to say thanks for sort of welcoming me in the sense that they didn't completely run me over. I stepped into an NHL locker room as a 20-year-old kid on a full-time basis. And I was really fortunate in that sense that I found people that were willing to answer questions and talk to me, to give me insight and guidance. And some of them aren't the biggest household name players. Like, it might not be the superstar that you'd want to take out to dinner, but I'm thinking guys along the lines of an Ian LePerriere, for instance, who was so key for me and just being able to go up to him and say, hey, how does this work? Or tell me about this. And instead of just like shooing me off or shooing me away, those types of people always had time for me to ask my stupid questions. And that really helped me get adjusted and also feel pretty comfortable and confident in my role.
I love that, Frank. Is there one person that you interviewed that really pulled at your heartstrings over the years?
Oh man, there's been a million. I would say a lot of the ones that stand out from an emotional standpoint go back to Humboldt. I was on the ground, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 hours after the accident. And so I had never been to Saskatchewan in my life. I could probably tell you where it was on a map, but don't know anything about the SJHL or the Humboldt Broncos or where Humboldt, Saskatchewan is. And I figured that we'd get a really cold reception. So I was, it was myself, our cameraman, Ryan Vardy, and another reporter, and Ryan Rashog. And I was expecting this really cold reception. I landed there, and the reports had been grim in terms of the number of deaths, the number of players still in hospital. And I pulled up to the rink, and there was 16 satellite trucks in the parking lot. And I was thinking, this is going to be a disaster. Like, it's already such a tough story to begin with. These people surely don't want us, in town and prying, trying to tell these stories. And in fact, like, what we got was the opposite. We got, just staying in that little town, people that were dropping off dinner to us as reporters, answering questions, telling us about and opening up about kids and in such an incredibly difficult time to tell their stories. And the fact that we were trusted to do that was amazing. And I made some lifelong connections, I think, being there. The Humboldt Broncos assistant coach, Chris Beaudry, he wasn't on the bus, but he was really the first person to arrive at the scene. I still talk to him, I don't know, every week or every other week. We trade a text message here or there, or we'll hop on the phone and connect. And just, didn't know him at all heading in, and someone had vouched for me that he knew from somewhere else, and he said, hey, Frank's a good guy, get to know him. And the trust that he showed in the most difficult circumstances imaginable was pretty amazing. Something I'll never forget. And I've been back there a couple times since, and it's always really emotional. It's even emotional just to fly over Saskatchewan.
Yeah, completely emotional events. That was one of those moments where most people that are immersed in the hockey world can remember where they were at that time. I don't know how you covered it. I don't know how I would be able to deal with something like that. How do you deal with covering stories like that are so emotional? How do you let go of that trauma bringing it home?
That was actually pretty hard, and I haven't really talked about this with many people, but after I came home, I went to see a therapist for a while because I was experiencing some PTSD. I was having nightmares. I was just not coping well. I was, antsy and fidgety and quick to anger. And I think that was my own way of responding to all the trauma that I had seen, families that were just so broken up, families that would never be repaired, and lives that would never be repaired. The first thing you think of, I think, when you go through that is your family and how it might impact you if you were to go through something like that. And so I really took some time to talk it out and to go to a therapist and really to get the help that I needed, because my wife, Megan, she would say, something's not right here. You're not processing this, the way that you could. And so, go talk, you really should talk to someone. And so I took that advice and went and did it. And I'm really glad I did.
Yeah, I'm really glad you did too. And thank you for opening up about that, because that's something that we're seeing more and more people be able to talk about. And it really helps the mental health of others out there. Someone like you saying it's okay to get help and to talk to people in those situations, Frank. I appreciate it.
Well, I felt silly too, Joe, because I was saying, like, I'm just a reporter here. I didn't have any trauma. I didn't, no one from my family was lost in this accident. Why do you feel so guilty about it? Why do you feel, all these different things in connection to it? In some ways, I kind of hinted at it. I felt like a voyeur, like, just watching and reporting on this from afar of other people's grief. And then you sort of, get to know these people and you take it on yourself. And I didn't need to. That was sort of my compassion in action, but it helped to have someone else explain that to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's turn a little bit lighter. Are you a Flyers fan?
No, I'm not.
Who's your team?
I don't have a team.
Okay.
Truly, I grew up as a Flyers fan. And then when I spent so much time covering that team, being so close to it, seeing how the sausage is made, I just, the journalist in me sort of took over. And it's actually been really weird from a fan standpoint, because it was hard for me to become a fan of anything after that. I'll tell you, the first real enjoyment I had as a fan after the fact was this year's Philadelphia Phillies baseball playoff run. That was the first real fan experience that I've had in 15 years. and that felt awesome. But there's never going to be a part of me that's a fan of any NHL team. I do root for people. I do root for good stories. I root for quick ends to games so that I can get my story done and get to the bar faster, but I don't root for a team.
I love it. I love it. Do you think by any chance the St. Louis Blues can pull off the win over the Colorado Avalanche tonight? Because I kind of got chippy and took them big tonight and in the first period. Any hope for me there, Frank?
I mean, they're, I'd imagine, pretty big underdogs, right?
They are.
And so the Avs have sort of been playing a lot better, but I think there's a way better team from the Blues that's down in there somewhere that just hasn't put it all together yet. And I've been saying that I can't believe this team has been as bad as it has to start. I'd imagine at some point they'll rebound. I just don't know if it's going to be tonight.
I hope it's tonight. I just got a little chippy. I don't even know why. Something was bugging me under my skin. Okay, Frank, I want to thank you so much for joining me here on the Joe Madden Sports Show. Can you let everyone know where to find you for all of your content as well as your podcast? I love your podcast, by the way. I checked it out this weekend.
Yeah, thank you. The podcast is called the DFO Rundown. You can get that wherever you get your podcast. We have a show on YouTube, a video show like this that runs Monday to Friday, 12 noon Eastern. You can find that on YouTube on the Daily Faceoff channel. And then, of course, my written work at dailyfaceoff.com. And my Twitter handle is Frank_Seravalli. Yeah, a true pleasure to be with you and get to spend a few minutes.
Thank you, Frank. All the best in everything that you have going on. I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.